Hi, I'm Nicola.
And I'm Jay Percy.
And welcome to the Afro Animist Podcast.
We are two animists and spiritual practitioners exploring the secular through the spiritual, discussing life experiences through a sacred lens.
Each week we share our experiences and dive deep into everything in life, from philosophy, metaphysics, obeah, occultism, shamanism, culture, healing, nature, animism,
the arts, pop culture, conspiracies, psychedelics and witchcraft. Nothing is off the table in these discussions, which aim to get to the heart of what it means to be spiritual and Afro-diasporic in an increasingly sterile and authoritarian world.
We keep it real whilst exploring the biggest mysteries of our multiverse. Join us holding this space to laugh, cry, debate, build community and tear down oppressive structures.
On the 15th of October, we'll be speaking live at the Magical Women's Conference about Afro-Indigenous practice and the shadow.
We'll be doing a deep dive into shadow work and using Afro-Indigenous practice to improve the relationship with the self and external world.
Get your tickets at www.magicalwomenconference.com. Look at the show notes for more information and see you there. Welcome, 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 beautiful beings of the multiverse. You're here today with me, Jay Percy.
And me, Nicola. We're very excited today. We have a wonderful guest on.
Yes, we are very, very excited to have Alex from the Laws of Nature on Instagram. Welcome, Alex. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We are buzzing.
Yes,
we are so buzzing to have you on. So talking all about plants today, because I don't know if you know, listener, we're plant people.
Oh yeah, May mentioned
we
it
like
once or
plants. And this episode is going to be all about sort of the folklore of plants, but in particular today we're going to be focusing on psychedelics. Let me tell you a little bit about Alex before we start getting into those questions. Alex's pronouns are they, them, she, her. Alex has been working in horticulture for about a decade now and started the channel during lockdown to help stay mentally stimulated in recovery after having been diagnosed with leukemia in 2019. It's good to see that you've got through your recovery. That must have been a lot, really heavy stuff to get through.
Yeah, I don't recommend cancer.
No.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's just the way you can't say it like that. Or can you? No, I think it's absolutely brilliant that you've been able to find a way to like pull yourself mentally through it, because you know the medicine's going to get you through one side of it. Your mind through another is so important. You know, in terms of staying positive and staying yourself. That's really, really, really admirable. What was it about plant folklore that helped you to, you know, get through that those blocks?
I've always kind of been interested in folklore and history and spooky stuff, I suppose. It's interesting actually, because when you're in cancer treatment, keeping a morale up is a really big part of the treatment, which I actually wasn't expecting. I thought it was going to be very clinical and, you know, but the nature of the cancer I had meant I had to live in hospital for a few months.
Oh.
And I was contained to like a sterile room.
Yeah.
So people had to be like masked and gloved, and I couldn't physically touch anyone or hug anyone or anything.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. I'm not touching you. No one come near me. But yeah, every day the nurses come in. You have to have tests and things done every 4 hours. So I constantly had nurses coming in, and I was in the process at the time of studying for an RHS qualification. So I tried to defer, but they wouldn't let me. I'll just say that now.
What?
Under those circumstances, they wouldn't let you defer.
So,
that is madness.
No. So I was sitting there with like a chemo drip, attached to my arm reading like this book of Latin to try and learn all of the plant names and stuff.
Oh
And all
my
the nurses were
God.
like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I've got to study for this thing, and I've got some exams I need to do at some point if I survive.
Oh my God.
And they did the thing that everyone does where they go, oh, you're into plants? And you go, yeah, I really like plants. I work with plants. And they go, I can't keep anything alive. Let me ask you 50 questions because I keep feeling
How do I not kill my cacti?
exactly. So word got out, and all of the nurses, it would be a brand new nurse I've never seen before, and she'd come in and go, so I was given this plant. I don't know what it is. It's got like flowers and leaves. What do you think it is? It helped so much. And obviously I was reading like interesting things as I was going through my revision. I was telling the nurses like, did you know this thing about this plant? And they're like, oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, great. But it kind of, I'd say it started the ball rolling for me launching the channel, because I was like, I can't keep this all in my head. I have to tell someone.
Yeah.
And when I started the channel, I was actually in a wheelchair full time. So my world had kind of shrunk down. I wasn't in hospital anymore, but my world was small. So I just had to open it up a little bit somehow. And, then the world ended with COVID. So
For sure.
yeah, I just thought someone will appreciate this. Even if it's just one person that follows me, they'll appreciate hearing something weird about pumpkins or something.
And well, this is why we have you on here. If you haven't already checked out this channel, it's really great. It's these stories, different folk tales about different plants, and their applications in the past. And I just think it's so very fascinating, because these are stories that would all but be forgotten through the passage of time, because we don't necessarily want to hold on to the non-scientific these days. But there's value, there's social value, there's enjoyment, there's keeping the sense of self in holding onto these stories, as we've heard from you. And that is so very brilliant. What better use case than that, really?
100%.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree that I think it sounds a bit trite actually, but I think we're supposed to, I think we forget that we are animals and that we are supposed to be outside and be in nature and stuff. And I'm sure we'll get to it later.
Oh no, we are big for this on this channel. We are animals. We're supposed to be out there, touching the grass,
hugging
licking
trees.
the trees. Don't do that.
I said, I mean, hugging.
Hugging the trees.
You can lick it if you want.
Hugging the trees. I wouldn't recommend doing that. Some things might be poisonous. We're meant to be out there.
Especially not in London. I wouldn't really lick anything without a good wash in London.
Get yourself down to Peckham, go lick a birch. Sounds fabulous.
Do not do that. And that sounds
Don't
so
do
coded.
that. We're not recommending that.
It sounds so coded. It's like, what does that mean? Go to Peckham, lick a birch. What does that mean?
This is not why I came to this podcast.
No, sorry guys. So where are you now in your recovery? Are you still in treatment? Are you in remission? Okay.
No, I'm in remission now. Okay. Been in remission. So I was in a drug trial actually, which it was okay.
Okay.
As far as drug trials go, it was fine, I suppose. But it meant that I don't have to go through years and years of bone marrow treatments, and that's how they offered it to me. They were like, you can pick path A or path B, and if you pick a really abhorrent drug trial, then it might last you through and you won't have to do any of that other stuff. So I was like, I'm quite impatient, so let's just do it.
That's what I was just going to say. So you picked like the short, hard version of the thing to do. But that works out for the best sometimes, I think.
Yeah, I was willing to take the gamble for some reason. It was quite a low survival rate, which I didn't tell anyone. It was just me and the doctor, and she said, I can't remember the numbers now off the top of my head, but it wasn't great. But she said actually, because of my ethnicity, there's so few donors for the bone marrow register. It's very difficult for Black people to get bone marrow transplants anyway. So she said the likelihood is you will be waiting for years. And then it becomes just a survival game for how long they can maintain you until the donor comes forward. So
For sure.
I just thought, I'm not willing to live like that. I'll just take my chances. Blasted me to hell and back, and now I'm fine.
Yes.
Are you feeling much better in yourself?
Yeah, I feel a lot better. Up and about again. A big part of that's been my garden, actually. Every year I do it anyway. I spend my winter planning the next growing season, and it kind of gets me through the winter. And I have my own little personal rituals and stuff. But like on the solstice, I'm really excited because it means the sun's coming back, and that's when I can start buying seeds in my head. And that meant so much more during recovery, you know.
For sure.
I love that, using these monumentous movements of the cosmos to mark just little things that mean so much to us. I think that's definitely what we're about here, about taking those like seemingly mundane tasks, going to the seed shop and getting seeds, but like working it into your rituals. That's really beautiful.
Yeah,
I have a similar thing with the summer solstice as well. I'm just like, woohoo, close off, let's go, life can begin for summer, let's get some seeds. I'm with you on that one.
I always feel like summer solstice makes me a bit sad.
Summer,
I don't know why. I always want to be like, yay, summer, but I'm like, oh, the days are shorter now.
That's true. No, that is true. And it always feels like, for me, it feels like it takes so long for it to get to, you know, the evening sunshine. And then all of a sudden, June 21st comes and goes, and we're back in like, it's dark at 5. It's not dark at 5 yet, but that is how I'm feeling. Because I don't know if you
I'm starting to notice that.
And because I'm walking the dog, which you will understand, Alex. Like, I don't know if during the heat you had trouble walking your dog, like having to find the right time. So that's the face of a dog owner in a heat wave. Like, so I'm trying to kind of go out much later in the evening. And now it's getting to that point where it's the heat is just about okay, but it's getting dark and I don't want to be out. Anyway, I'm sorry, guys. This is the tangent of being a dog owner.
This is the tangent where we talk about why is the sun disappearing? We don't like this.
Like, why? Yeah. But anyway, look, all the dog owners are going to they're going to really be happy that I spoke about that for 5 minutes, because it's been a challenge.
Yeah.
It's been a challenge.
It's been awful. I've got a corgi, so he's been half dead the whole time. He's really
with those little legs.
I've had to set up like a nest in my bedroom where I put like duvets around to catch the cold air from the fan he's laying on. Cool. But he's so upset, and he'll like pouring at the door like, I want to go out. I'm like, you'll die.
You'll die.
Go out there. I'm sorry.
You should get. Did you get what? Have you seen these little cool mats? I'll send you a link. It has literally been the saving grace for my dog.
Yeah, no, I've got one. There's one right next.
Best thing.
She's been like peddling these cooling mats. I think she's getting commission.
I mean, Amazon, you should start paying me, bro, for these. I mean, I don't like promoting them, like I have said before, because it's definitely just made of toxic shit. But if you've got an animal, it will change your life. Get the cool mat. Anyway, back to plants. Non-toxic, or maybe toxic.
What were you studying with the Royal Horticultural Society?
It's Principles of Horticulture.
Okay.
Whatever that devolves into for them.
Okay.
It's quite basic, but I started the qualification just to pad out my CV, and I enrolled about a month before I got diagnosed, so that was money well spent. I kind of didn't even want to do it after that.
I guess it gets layered with these meanings that the passage of time that it's related to and all of that.
Yeah,
it's a shame. But you still kept your love of plants, and today we brought you on mostly because, well, we wanted you here. And then secondly, when we asked, like, what do you want to talk about? You said you really want to talk about psychedelic and plant medicines.
Yes.
What are they? What are psychedelic and plant medicines for our listeners who have no idea what these things are?
Well, I should say off the bat that I do believe medicine, psychedelic, one and the same thing, blend the two together.
Okay.
I think how we talk about these plants and medicines and whatever you want to call them, I think we've become so far removed from the actual value of them. I can only obviously speak for the Western society, but I just think if we could get back to a place where we're looking at these plants as plants and not as evil drugs, then it would radicalize society, and honestly everyone would be so much happier, you know.
Yes.
There wouldn't be any Karens anymore if we all have access to drugs.
I honestly think anyone who engages with these plant medicines, you will see at some point down the line where there's a sort of notion or the thought experiment that why isn't this somehow in the water supply? Why hasn't everyone got access to these things? Because I feel so much happier having experienced this thing or having worked alongside this plant medicine in whatever healing context that they've worked with them. But yeah, you're entirely right. They are definitely one in the same. So what are the applications of plant psychedelic medicines in someone's life?
Many and varied. I'd say a rainbow of applications and uses and benefits, and some of them obviously, I mean, the medicines that we have are from plants, so for me it's a kind of, you know, when you get people, and especially as a cancer patient, I'm sure if any cancer patients are listening to this, they'll roll their eyes and be like, yes, you are often faced with a barrage of people being like, I don't think you should have chemo. Did you know if you just eat turmeric, then that kills cancer in your life?
Just eat a load of yogurt, it disappears, and a fairy tells you that your life is going to be perfect from now on.
It's honestly constant. And I had like an Instagram page to just update all my friends and family about what I was doing and stuff, so I didn't have to constantly be texting. And through that page, non-stop, people messaging me saying, oh, you know, I sell random herb. Do you want some? It kills cancer. Did you know they're making you more sick with chemotherapy and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's a very American take on the situation, actually, because our medical treatment is free. So why would they be making me more? So they're not going to benefit from that here. And I think that is a very US-centric attitude that some Americans have. But I'm in my general life, I'm like, why not both? Why can't we have both of these things that have both been proven to work? Why do I have to pick a side between these two things? It's really strange to me that they're all medicines.
I think it's quite fascinating you saying that. It reminds me of I'm quite into Paul Stamets. He's a mycologist. I think he's a really fascinating bloke. Look him up. And he was talking about his mother who had breast cancer. And she was, of course, going through the chemotherapy and the treatments. But he also said, you know, if you're taking turkey tail, Trametes versicolor, did I get that right? Alongside these chemo treatments, then, you know, you actually stand a better chance of fighting this thing. And there's this whole body of research into turkey tail mushrooms and how they can help with that. And his mother, of course, did this both. She did the chemo, she used the turkey tail mushrooms, and she, you know, came out fighting fit. So it does show how these things can go like hand in hand in certain situations. but it must be freaking annoying. I mean, I live with PCOS and endometriosis, and I'm doing my best to, manage that. And that's nothing on the scale of cancer, and you still have people, have you done this? Have you done that? I've heard that if you do this, I've heard that you do this, I've heard you cut this out and do this thing. It's like, oh.
Yeah. And they're just so you can't even get that angry, but
yeah. It's just a big
it's a place of understanding. And
this conversation is making me sick.
I've had a few of those. I do think it is such an important point you bringing up about our Western medicine, also our situation here in this country where we do have free healthcare, and how actually there's a place, I feel like something that we can do when we're spiritual or we're trying to be eco, or whatever word we want to put on it, is that we can actually ignore the amazing technologies that we have that are really, really useful for certain things. And I think part of living in this world and doing this stuff now in these times is kind of being able to acknowledge and marry and use what you need, and really doing that with non-judgment as well. I've got a friend at the moment who has cancer, and she's been saying the same thing to me. It's like she does not want anyone to turn around and tell her what supplements she should have or how okay everything is going to be. It's literally just like, let me go through my healing process. So yeah, guys, back off. Back off and just support.
Give people space.
Give people space. I want to ask you about, because Jay mentioned before we came on that you, oh gosh, just lost a headphone. Jay mentioned before you came on about you'd had some psychedelic folklore videos banned from your TikTok. Like what happened with that? What was that about?
Yeah, I thought, I'm going to talk about psychedelics because it's really interesting. TikTok does not like that. Okay. I mean, I get the policy is that it has to be family friendly. In my opinion, it's not like I'm saying let's all do drugs. I'm just saying this is the plant that it's from. These are the uses that are still going on today as well. I don't understand how you can ban something that is the reality for probably thousands of people still, and it's a really important cultural practice. That's literally all I was talking about. But I think I made about 5 videos about it, and I think 2 of them came down. And I think I had a warning, and then I sort of defiantly ploughed on. I didn't want to lose my channel though, so I kind of dialed it down a bit, but I made a video about poppies.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I noticed just my engagement just went down. Like they just throttled my channel. Really? And I had no views or anything. So I'm fine, I'll stop.
Can you tell us a little bit about, I think some of us might know where you're going with this, but let us know. What were you talking about with poppies?
Well, I talked about the history of them and how they used to be a really kind of exalted plant because they have these amazing pain-killing, benefits. And I'm sure Game of Thrones fans will remember the milk of the poppy, and it's in so much of our culture and it's woven through everything, but it's been so vilified by the war on drugs that there's even issues in America, particularly with people even growing poppies in their garden ornamentally.
Really? Wow.
There's actually a great book called This Is Your Mind on Plants. Highly recommend it. It's divided into 3, and one of the thirds is about poppies and the author's journey with trying to grow them, to take them. He wanted to take the drugs, but there was a big legal battle, and the FDA were involved, and it goes right to the top. Even like horticulture companies and plant sellers and things were being like throttled just for selling the dried seed heads ornamentally. How florists will use them and stuff. It was seized all over the place, and it's really crazy that it's a plant. It grows out of the ground. Just let people. Anyway,
it's a plant, guys.
Yeah, it's not a huge threat. It's fine. But and I don't know if I should say, but it does have a recipe for making opium tea in that book.
Well, look, this is the thing. Okay, obviously we have to be careful with some of these things that we know are very dangerous or highly toxic, but there is also, like you're saying, Milk of the Poppy, obviously big fantasy fan over here. That it is, you're right, woven through our culture, and it's because of the benefit of this plant as well. So like thinking about, sometimes I have I think of the apocalypse. I can't remember. I can't say the word. And I think about what skills I have and what skills I don't have. I think if things were to change tomorrow, like what would I be able to do? How would I be able to support myself and other people? And there are things like that, which, you know, you've actually got a very good painkiller that I feel like it would be really like bigger than a shame, but I can't think of a better word than a shame, to actually lose that knowledge and that technology that comes from that plant, because you're right, because of this war on drugs, or because of this idea that we've been taught, because, you know, apparently if you look at a drug then you immediately just get addicted to it and there's no hope. It's such like it's such a crazy conversation around all these things, you know, and I just feel like you're saying, Alex, it's been a massive place of power for you. Like, look how much you've empowered yourself and your healing by researching and understanding about this, and also in the sharing of that information, because there's something that happens when you share information. It becomes a different thing. It then becomes a whole entity in itself, and you're creating a change. Did you do any other psychedelic plants on your channel, or did you stop at poppies because they
I touched on cannabis.
Okay.
I'd have to rewatch the video to know how deep I went into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there's a whole theory within the kind of fantasy fandom of, you know, in, how have I forgotten what this book is called? The Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah.
The have like a herb that they smoke, and everyone's like, oh, okay, it's weed.
It's weed, babe. It's definitely weed.
100%. And it like describes how they felt after they took it and stuff, and it's just their little hobbit herbs or whatever, but it's very clearly
like, these are the
hobbit
most
herbs. That sounds like a great name for a new strain.
That's what our strain's going to be called as soon as it's legal.
Honestly, so many. When I looked into the research, I was like, oh, okay.
Straight up, like these hobbits, man, they're so happy, they're so chilled. They're like the most peaceful people in Middle Earth. They smoke weed. That's what they do. They just sit around smoking weed.
It's not a coincidence.
It's not a coincidence.
Mordor, where nothing grows, is so aggro.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I do like that you brought up cannabis, though, because traditionally, I mean, in the public psyche, we don't really think about this being a psychedelic, but it is, in fact, a psychedelic herb. When smoked, you know, you get those sort of feelings of relaxation and connection to nature. Some people might get that sort of paranoia or that exacerbating of things that are already on their mind. When ingested through food, you do, I think, get more of this sort of psychedelic feel to it, and depending on the strain, you can get more of a sort of like a body slump, or like a head high, I guess is how it's described. It is a herb, I guess, that has
those differences, the indica strains and the sativa strains. This is how I remember it. Indica in the couch. It's that one in your body. Sativa.
Indica in the couch. That's a really good.
An American definitely told me that when I was in LA, which is the only place I've ever touched or seen weed. I've never seen it in any other place.
Obviously, never in the UK ever. Only in only in Portland.
Those places. What do you think, Alex, about like our situation with cannabis right now, like with them legalizing this herb in America? You know, so these are our closest special relationship people, and the situation in this country is obviously quite different. I don't know, do you have any thoughts around that?
It really blows my mind that it's not legal. I just I'm a very logical person.
Yeah.
So I'm just constantly like, the science tells us it's fine.
Yeah.
Why is it not? Alcohol kills more people. You know, nicotine kills more people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we still in this position where no one's willing to legalize it? It's all political, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just, it blows my mind that we've had, you know, like Professor Nutt and his big studies and things, the reason he got fired and all of that. The experts are saying it's fine. Just let people. I mean, I should say that again in that book, This Is Your Mind on Plants, he makes a really, really good point that I hadn't considered before, where because that book is about poppies, so heroin, caffeine, and mescaline.
Okay.
And he makes the point that all of these things are illegal, not caffeine, obviously, but they're illegal because they make people happy, and happy people aren't good fodder for the capitalist machine.
Happy people don't buy shit.
Happy people don't buy shit.
Yeah.
Happy people also probably won't just do everything you tell them to do. Do you know what I mean? That is literally why it is.
Yeah.
We've got this conversation in this country, especially with the Tories, that is like, the workforce. If they legalise weed, then a few people would be like willing to be part of that fucking workforce in that way. It's like,
Yeah, I'm one of them. I'm one of them. I'm
babe, you didn't need weed to
this December.
Yeah, you didn't want to be part of that anyway. You didn't need the herbs to tell you.
I didn't want to be, but I did. No, but you say that, but I might have done, because I didn't realise I didn't want to be part of this. I just thought at the age of 22, 23, I was going into work and I was just having a really hard time because I was just not very good at this. And then I was introduced to the folkloric plants, and I realised I'm actually very happy and content with myself. I have all of these skills that I love doing. These are the people I have around me that I love. I just absolutely don't love coming into this horrible space and having some dolt tell me I'm doing something the wrong way. I don't appreciate that. And it wouldn't have been, that self-reflection journey probably would not have happened had it not been through these highly anti-capitalist plants.
100%. I mean, he does talk about psychedelics generally as well, and the studies into them that have obviously all been really positive, but still these things are illegal pretty much everywhere. And does say that it's likely because those kind of the psychedelics, you know, that you think of where you go on a trip and things, make you self-reflective to the point where you start to question, why am I going into an office 9 to 5, Monday to Friday? That's not how I'm supposed to live my life.
No.
That doesn't seem right anymore. So you might quit your job. And obviously at the height of the LSD craze in the 60s and things, people were leaving their jobs in droves and just trying to find happiness, and let's just buy a van and go around the country, live our best lives and stuff. So, but they don't want that. They want us to have caffeine so that we can be super productive. And I didn't know that it was only with the rise of coffee as a popular drink that we started having things like night shifts.
Really?
What?
It did not exist before coffee became a thing. When they started, like factory owners and things would be like, break time, and it's how they introduced breaks, because they would give you a break and then give you a load of coffee so that you could not lag in your job through the afternoon.
Angry, automatically pissed.
Me too, babe.
God.
Like, what?
Yeah.
They were so
enraged. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It really
that is
just
amazing.
I
Because
can't
it messes with your circadian rhythm.
Yeah, exactly. And there's studies that have shown that consuming caffeine has the same, in some people, has the same brain activity stuff as doing like a line of coke. It's a really
I'm one
I'm
of
not
those
just
people.
averaging it.
I can't drink coffee. I get the mad jitters, and I'm just like on edge. It's like I'm
Yeah.
tweaked out. I've never
Yeah.
tried meth, but I feel like it's probably what meth would feel like.
Yeah. But it's so normalized now that coffee drinkers are addicted. It's full on an addiction, and not everyone knows someone that's like, I can't function until I've had my first cup of coffee. And it's so hard. If you were to just be stranded on a desert island, you would be withdrawing from it, and it would be a serious withdrawal. It's not this, you know.
Oh my
and
gosh.
I'm not demonizing it, you know.
No, but I'm there. I'm that person who would be having withdrawal symptoms on the desert island while desperately trying to enjoy the glorious like isolation I just landed in. Like the for me, coffee was like I'm the same as Jay. Caffeine, even to have cacao, like I would struggle with the caffeine in raw cacao, and it was purely from having to do early shifts that I got into having it. So having to be at work at 6 a.m. and then I would have a coffee, and that would be what would make me able to function. But I had to get past the jitters. So there was like a period of like 6 months of like literally getting my body used to this caffeine, used to this drug, so that I can use it for that. And now it's at the point where I could have 3 coffees and still not feel very awake. You know, it's such an intense, such a crazy drug. But then the irony is that coffee is also a beautiful medicine. You know, there's so many beautiful properties from that plant as well. I don't know, do you know much about about the properties of coffee at all? I don't want to put you on the spot. I just don't know what they are.
I'm not anything, but I will say that as much as I'm saying, like, you know, people are addicted and blah blah blah, don't want it to sound like I'm anti-coffee, because we live in a society where that is a necessary drug to take. So I don't want anyone to feel bad about, you know, thinking like, oh, I am addicted to coffee, maybe I should quit or anything. Do what you need to do, 100%. Across the board, I think for all plant medicines, we should be allowed to do what we need to do to just survive and thrive.
Agreed. But wouldn't it be so beautiful if we lived in a society where like coffee wasn't necessary? It was just there because you wanted that little thing, rather than you needed to be able to do this fucking boring job all day.
To tolerate the humans at work that offer the most mundane solutions to the most mundane tasks.
Yeah, we're not supposed to live like that. I've not gone back to work yet. I'm still technically in my recovery period, and I will be for another few years. But a few of my doctors are like, oh, you should think about going back. Like, I'm never going back. No. As far as I can, I'm freewheeling now.
Oh, babe.
Because I worked in marketing before, so one of the circles of hell. Really, if anyone in the future, if this ages badly and I end up back in marketing, disregard everything I'm saying.
I'm going to urge you to not go back to the past. I know it's a skill you have, but those are like sideways skills. And besides, you know what? That's a whole parallel. We'll do the career advice podcast in a different way. But it's such a stress. All of these stresses, you know, they really don't help when you're in a period of trying to heal the self, whether it be the body, the mind, or both. And, you know, pumping coffee into your system to deal with that, it's not going to help even more.
Yeah, exactly.
So what other folk stories did you put on TikTok that were like banned, taken down from the world?
God, I can't even think now. I remember the poppy one ended, and I was so thrilled with myself. And I was so annoyed that no one saw it, because I was so pleased, smugly sitting there like, yes, I am a genius. Because I drew a parallel between the fact that poppies essentially make you sleepy, like opioids will have that, you know, numbing kind of effect, and how they're used in The Wizard of Oz, when they fall asleep in the field of poppies, and it travels into real life because we have things like Flanders fields and poppies for where all of the soldiers lay dying.
Yeah.
I was like,
Hmm.
poppies are very important to humans.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an iconic plant, but I've touched on other things which have gone down really well, which weren't caught by TikTok, like willows, where we painkillers from, just not opioid painkillers. So
is that aspirin we get, willow?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know about this. Please educate me. Just like a couple of things about willow. So we use it as a natural painkiller, aspirin.
Yeah, you can chew willow bark and it has aspirin in it. Obviously, if anyone's got a heart condition, do not chew willow bark.
Yeah.
Aspirin is not good. But yeah, that's what people used to use. If you were ever having minor surgeries or anything, just chew a little bit of that and you'll be fine. Headaches and things like that. But in folklore, it's such an important plant. I actually think I did 2 or 3 part video on it. There's so much.
Okay.
I was telling my therapist about it recently because she has a huge willow tree in her garden. She's very spiritual, so she was like, "Oh, tell me about willows," and I was like, "You'll like this." There's folklore that says you can tell all your secrets to a willow, and it would sooner die and drop all of its branches before telling anyone else.
Wow. So it's like a free therapist. You can go and talk to a willow tree.
So let's think about grandmother willow. Do you remember? Like, so I feel like that then makes even more sense. Like this safety of this grandmother energy. Yeah. Ooh, I love willow trees as well.
There's so many. I love like joining up these little nuggets of things. There's all of the human experience surrounding plants. It's just a network across cultures. There's so many things. I don't think I've uploaded it yet, but I'll put up a video this week of tree spirits. So outside of obviously cultures where they don't have trees growing, like in the Arctic Circle or anything like that. Outside of that, if there's a culture that has trees, they have folklore about tree spirits. Time immemorial, all humans have been like, think that tree's haunted.
Yeah.
That tree's a dick. Don't talk to that tree.
Yeah, and you have like evil trees and good trees, and it seems nonsensical until you start digging into it and reading about all of these beliefs across, Shintoism and all of these different religions that are completely separate from one another, but somehow it's the same thing every single time. And I think there's something in that. And it's just really amazing. So I've started, I don't know if I'll make it a series, maybe I will, where I just go through all the different tree spirits. And I've started with Kodama, the classic, because everyone knows Studio Ghibli, and their depiction of them are probably the most famous ones. And I talked about the Leshy in Slavic folklore, which I made a point of pointing out that it's considered an evil tree spirit, but it's only considered evil because it's morally neutral.
Oh.
So its role is to protect the forest. So if you're thinking it's evil, it's because you've done something to piss it off. And I think it's funny that humans in general are like, this thing is evil. It's like,
Well, this is funny. This reminds me.
That's a big concept within animism.
100%, and also reminds me very much of like a part of it's one of the spirits in Abia, and the way that we've had to kind of scrape all the Christian shit away from it to actually be able to understand this neutral morality and what this means as a guardian energy. It's very interesting because sorry to cut you off.
Are you talking about Sasa Bonsam?
I am, yeah.
Sasa Bonsam is sort of known as the Lord of the Woods, but probably what better point to bring that up than now when we're talking about tree spirits. But within Obia, Sasa Bonsam is the Lord of the Woods, and sort of this defender, and Christian concepts have really demonized this sort of like horned devil that lives in the woods and fucks people up in the woods. Well, it's a lot more like morally neutral than that. If you're going into the woods with good intentions, then nothing bad's going to happen to you. If anything, you'll leave on your merry way with more fortune attached to you. You're going in trying to ruin the environment, then of course you're gonna catch a duppy. You're gonna catch this bad spirit on you. And this idea of tree spirits is just so, it's like, it makes so much sense to me. And I think if I were walking down the road and talk to any NPC, any normie, it would be like, oh, that's stupid. But I genuinely feel like every time I walk into my local park, there's like a pine there that I just have the urge to hug every time I go in. So I'll do like a quick left and right, and it'll be a big hug. Hi, nice to see you again. And then I'll go on about my walk. And there are like 2 trees. There's one pine and there's a eucalyptus of some kind that I have those like undeniable urges to just like, hi. And then my day
it's very human. It's a very human response. And it does seem to be very targeted towards trees. I suppose because they're the biggest things. They're awe-inspiring, but it is very human to just love them. And I mean, even knocking on wood and things like that, that used to be knock, and tree spirits will give you good luck. So these things are still very common, but I think people don't realise what they're actually, when someone says, "Oh, knock on wood," casually, I don't think that they realise they're echoing their ancestors back, centuries, the things that they still believed.
Guys, go on Laws of Nature's page right now and look at her video she did about knocking on wood. Seriously, because that, to me, I loved that video. I was like, this is exactly the kind of information we need. It's like bringing these things that we do that are literally just ingrained in our culture, like knock on wood. Why do you do that? How many things, how many superstitions we do without actually thinking them through at all? We're masters of that, just following the leader. There's an actual thing about it. It's all about calling on the spirits, and for me that makes so much. It's like, obviously that's what it is. Obviously you're calling for protection. Obviously that's what it is.
We talk a lot about psychedelics here on the Afro Animist Podcast, largely because we're big mushroom people who only engage with those mushrooms in the legal protected place of the Netherlands, where no one can be arrested for engaging with nature. Isn't that right? And I just think that side of like entheogens being like peyote, mushrooms, anything that really contains that like DMT type feeling, I think they're just so fascinating for remembering your connection with spirit. What do you think about the criminalization of those things here in this country?
I think it's the most ridiculous thing. I suppose at its root, it's it's offensive that governments would have so little faith in their citizens that they think, oh, if we legalize these mushrooms, everyone's just going to be high all the time. And I mean, that was the argument for not legalizing cannabis in America. And sure, when you legalize it, there is a big uptake of people doing it because it's new and novel, but it levels out and now it's fine. And just everyone's vibing and it's not an issue, as far as I know, things like crime are down in a lot of areas, and it's only had really positive effects. And I think that would be the same for all of them, because if you legalize them, you would have experts in those fields pretty quickly. I mean,
you absolutely would. I volunteer as a tribute. Is that what you sort of hope to see in the future with these things for this country, that sort of mass legalization then?
Yeah, 100%. I don't know if it'll ever happen, honestly. I think Britain's maybe too conservative. but maybe I'm just jaded from this circle of hell that we're living in right now.
Do you know, on my art channel, there was a large point where I was like banging the drum for Decriminalize, and then I quickly realized people don't care about that. They find like this news cycle, they find a new thing to move on to, and you know, that was me banging on about it. 2019, 2020 happened, 2020 happened, and then 2021 happened. What happened there? I'm losing track.
It just was a continuation of 2020.
It's just
weirdness.
Pandemic, war, terrorism. Like when everyone's going to say, "Oh, this isn't really important to talk about. Why are we going to talk about that?" But in my mind, it is so important because it kind of prevents these things from going forward, because we have a more ecocentric, connected, you know, psyche that prevents these things in the long run. And, you know, Joe Biden's administration said they're going to be decriminalizing MDMA and mushrooms in the next 2 years. Do you think our government will reach that place, or do you hope they do?
I hope they do.
You hope they do.
I'm so jaded at this point.
Yeah.
I don't do anything. I mean, maybe, hopefully in the next 10 years, maybe. But I mean, they can't even get around to cannabis. I can't see. Or I suppose at the very least, they will open up avenues for psychedelics to be used medicinally in clinical setting. I think that would be a first step that would be really beneficial to a lot of people. I know that they've started doing like ketamine infusions and things like that. I think we're supposed to have the access to these drugs as human animals. We are supposed to have the widest variety possible of everything. And I think in general life, we're all aware that you never have an extremes of things are bad. You want the kind of middle of the road, and that's where you find happiness. The middle of the road is having everything available to you,
100%.
not a restriction. So it just makes no sense to me that those things would be off the cards when you've got the suicide rate what it is, and everyone's miserable all the time. It's not fair.
It's like it's gotten worse.
Yeah,
it's gotten worse.
100%.
Look how mad the world has gone, and we're not even allowed to smoke some weed. Like, it is that simple. And you know, it's again, it's about the receptors in our bodies. You know, this is the thing. It's like we have receptors that are literally, their function in our body is to work with some of these plants. If your body is literally built like that, or if your brain, for example, will create some of these illegal substances just naturally on its own, then how can these things be kept from us? Like, you have to ask a deeper question as to the why, because it isn't just a health thing or you're going to overdose. Like, that isn't what the issue is actually with a lot of these plants that we're talking about as well. There's definitely something I feel like much more nefarious under the scenes. That is why we aren't allowed to really connect in the places that we would naturally connect.
Definitely.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And I think, I don't know if I'm being a bit idealistic or simplistic in this view, but I feel like if we had access to practices that have kind of echoed down the ages with regards to plant medicines and making ourselves happy through those, it would naturally reduce things like addiction, where people are self-medicating in order to overcome a trauma. If you're underscoring that trauma, I mean, you can't avoid trauma, life is pain, fine. But if you can underscore all of that with this punctuation of feeling good and feeling at one and whole with yourself, which is what these plants do for you, then where would be the need to, I don't want to be trite, but like put a needle into your arm if you have been using heroin in the way that, for me, you're supposed to use it, which is low dosing it in tea to make you feel good every once in a while. And, you know, I don't want to be just reduction. I know addiction is a very complicated thing, but I just feel like a lot of issues that people have surrounding drugs and even things like cannabis. I've known people who are psychologically addicted to cannabis and they can't sleep and things. And I'm like, well, you hate your job, your family is shit, your life is terrible. You can't sleep. But if you were using these plants in the correct way, in my opinion, I don't think any of these things would be a problem, because you would have made the steps in your life. They would have allowed you to open up your mind to the point where you could make the steps in your life that would take out all of these issues. So
I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
So many people talk about how these psychedelics have like helped them, and we're finally starting to see documentaries on Netflix about how they help as well. So I think you make some brilliant points. So I think a big part of moving towards legalization in this country is the storytelling, is the folklore, is being story keepers for ourselves instead of letting the government be the story keepers and the government saying these things are bad. When we start to take these stories back into the hands of the people and spread this folklore, that's one way we can sort of get into changing the narrative. So how can we keep this folklore alive in our communities, and how will it benefit humanity in the long run?
I think you have to, I feel really bad saying this, but I think you have to divide, what am I trying to say? You have to kind of divide up, it's a cultural divide. So, for example, I talk about a lot of cultural practices from around the world on my channel. Whereas I do talk about Baltic or Slavic things. Oh, I feel so bad. But the vast majority of this kind of knowledge is passed down through minority cultures. So in this country, we have a problem in that the majority are white. Treading carefully. And I'm not saying there is no folklore in the UK, because there is tons, and it's the lion's share of what I talk about is British folklore, and it's very rich. A lot of it stems from Scotland, Wales, and Ireland, because those are the cultures that have kept it going. In England, it's there and you can find it, and there are people like me that are talking about it, but it is very niche. And if you just walk up to someone on the street and say, oh, did you know this thing about willow trees or rowan trees or ash trees? And they'll be like, oh, that's really interesting, I didn't know that. But if I was to go to South Africa, and I could probably ask 20 people, and a lot of those people would be like, yes, my grandmother told me this story about this thing. And I think in Black and brown cultures, it's just a lot more normal to storytell in a way that I don't think is that common in the US and the UK. So, I think get the melting pot going a little bit, listen to us a bit more, because we have a lot to say about really interesting things, but people don't listen to Black women, so...
Well, we're changing that. We're making them.
Wow, I laugh because it's so sad, but true. It's funny because it's true. No, this country, one of the things I think I bang on about to my husband way too much is how this culture, along with the Romans and the Saxons, had a lot of their own culture completely torn away from it. And over time, what that has meant is that any sort of more folkloric culture that came with this land was stripped away. So the white people of this land have had a large part of their culture ripped away, and they don't acknowledge that. And in that lack of acknowledgement, they don't realize how much of themselves that they have lost, and how angry they are in that, because this has been lost. But when we get back to the stories about where it was lost, first with the Romans and again with the witch trials, where loads of medicine people would have absolutely been just killed and all of their knowledge would have been decimated along with it. I think when we start looking at some of these stories in this country as, instead of just like scary stories where, oh, this witch got burned at a stake, and more like a load of cultural knowledge is just gone, guys.
Yeah.
I think that's where we start to get to a point where we can start to reinstate some of that did disappear. Those are just my thoughts. My poor husband has to listen to me rant about my race.
No, I completely agree. I find it funny that so many British people, if you ask them if they know anything about their heritage, they always say Viking.
Yeah. Like, wow, guys, the whole country wasn't just like
it's more like
Danish warriors.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's interesting actually, you know, even about this, because there were several years ago I was part of a group and they brought a shaman over from the Quinn tribe deep in the Amazon jungle, and one of the first things he was asking when he got here was like, where are your elders, like where are the people with the knowledge, where are your shamans, basically, where are your shamans? And the women who brought him over,
and we put them in a building called Parliament,
basically. And she said to him, she was like, oh, we killed them all. They've been gone for like 2,000 years, bro. We don't have that stuff. And he cried. He was like, you don't know how sad this is for you. You do not understand how sad this is for you, that you have no connection to where you came from in that way, that you've destroyed yourselves to such an extent that you haven't been able to carry on any of the thousands and thousands of years of knowledge. Because this is one thing that I feel like we get kind of lost in modern days. It's like, apparently we're the smartest, bestest version of human beings that have ever been around. I find that very difficult to believe. Like, that we have had thousands and thousands and thousands of years of history, culture, growth. We have lost shit. We have definitely lost stuff. And I feel like when you see all the structures that we put in now, like even we're talking about, you know, the potential of just decriminalizing a herb. What a big conversation that is. Sometimes I can't even believe like what big fucking conversation that is. And it's like this is what happens, I feel like, when you take stuff away from people to try and create like mass control. And then you have this whole society who are massively disconnected, and we don't even see it, because this is a phrase my partner likes to use. He's like, you have to understand, English people, we live in the castle grounds. So we're the closest to the rules, you know, but we're also the ones who can catch the bread that's thrown out of the castle. You know, so we're not like all the other plebs who are further away from it. We're right there. It's harder to kind of step out of that kind of safety net in a really crazy way. And I feel like it's kind of an issue in England. I really wanted to ask you, Alex, do you have a favourite plant? Like, what's your favourite plant?
I get asked this a lot.
Okay. It's a really annoying question.
It's just hard.
Yeah.
Because I just don't. I feel like I should be like, oh, 100% into the blah blah blah, but I'm looking down here. I'm sat next to a plant right now.
Not bad. I can't smack around that plant. It'll be sad.
Let me show you. I'll show you this.
Oh, you're my favourite plant.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Oh, he's got loads of babies.
He's sorry, you're not my favourite.
Don't tell him to his face.
He's one of my favourites. He is a spider plant. I really like spider plants. They have the best flowers. And this one's actually from a mother plant that I was growing about 5 years ago, and I've just kept it going, and it just keeps taking over my house over and over, and I keep giving it away, and it keeps coming back. So they love me. But I actually made a video semi-recently about this. I can't think what I said on there now. I was telling the truth on it. I just can't remember what I said. I said I have in my garden a massive lemon verbena plant.
Wow.
It's about 6 foot tall now, and I grew it from like a little baby, and it's moved house with me 3 times. Wow. And it survived that massive Beast from the East freeze that we had a few years ago.
Yes.
It was dead, it came back, and it's just a bulletproof plant. I love it, and it smells incredible. And because of the size of it, around sort of May time, the first hot day, you'll go outside and it's just lemons like punching you in the face.
Lovely.
Amazing. But when I was diagnosed, obviously I was in hospital for months. My partner was looking after my garden for me, but he's not a plant guy, so he was like, I've watered them and that's it. He's obviously stayed in hospital with me a lot as well, so the garden was completely neglected. A lot of stuff died. I had to give a lot of stuff away. And then we actually moved. We were living in Manchester at the time, and then I moved down to Somerset, which is where I am now. But turns out it's really hard to move like 200 plants. So I ended up giving away like the vast majority of everything, but I kept the lemon verbena because it was one of the only things that just completely, it was like I hadn't been away. It just came back like, oh, you're back. Welcome. I love it so much. And I also said star jasmine. It's one of my favourites.
I love star jasmine so much. But do you know what? My plant hasn't flowered this year. It's had more sun, and like I thought I really looked after it, but it hasn't really flowered.
It happens sometimes. One of my roses didn't flower this year.
Why do they do this to us, man? We put in so much effort into you. You won't even give me the flowers for the 2 weeks of the year that I'm wishing for them.
Well, it probably means next year you'll have like a bumper crop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
But they remind me of before I moved to Manchester. I've moved around a lot. I lived in Cambridge, and it's when I got my dog, and I was mentally really, really low. Terrible. I hated my job. I actually got made redundant, and I was just at a crossroads in my life of like, what am I going to do? This is a shambles. I was in a really terrible relationship and living somewhere I really hated, and but the somewhere that I hated was in this glorious countryside. So I started just being like, I need to be outside. I have to be out. So I was spending whole days just wandering around in the Cambridge countryside, and I thought, I need someone to do this with. So I got my dog, and it was just the best. Like, there's some of my best memories, and we'd stay out all day, be really hot, and then we'd walk back along the river, and there would always be like barn owls flying over, bats, and just an amazing amount of wildlife. And then we'd come back into the village, and the smell of the jasmines, because it was a really tiny village, it had spread through all the gardens, so the whole village was, the aroma, it was like perfume. It was amazing, and it just makes me think of like watching the sunset with my dog. So I think that'll always be my favourite. It'll always remind me of him. So
I love that.
Such a beautiful story. And what a lovely place to bring this episode to an end. Tell us, Alex, how can people find you? Is there a final message you want to leave people with today?
You can find me on TikTok at The Laws of Nature, and same on Instagram. And I will also have a threadless shop of the same name, The Laws of Nature. Please give me money.
We saw your designs in love. Crazy about them.
Thank you. I can only apologise for how expensive the shipping is to the UK. You know, it's an American company, and it was really important to me that it's size inclusive, because a lot of these t-shirt companies and things,
they really aren't. They stop at like XL, and what is XL? Is what XL.
Exactly. I wanted to include as many people as possible, so I just had to pick an American company, and very expensive to ship to the UK. But I'm looking at other things, so hopefully something will shake out. But yeah, we'll see. Stay tuned. I think my message would be that if you felt during lockdown, we've all been through this collective trauma, and if you felt in any way that there's something missing in your life, put your hands in some soil. It's been proven to work. It's so good for you. It's just nourishing. Green therapy it can just make such a difference. And people are really struggling in this country at the moment. And I know it's difficult, especially in cities and things, to find access to green spaces. But there are charities and community projects and things like that just bring out the best in human beings.
Yeah.
Because it's the community that makes us shine as individuals. So the government is trying to kill us all. Forget about that level.
Straight up.
Let the community nourish you,
Mm.
and through the community, plants bind us all together. That's what they do. It's what they're on earth to do. So
Lovely. Such a lovely parting gift from you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
thank you.
Thank you, dear listener, for being with us today. We are honestly so happy that you could be here with us and Alex talking about plant folklore. You know, at some point we're probably going to be bothering you again about more folkloric stories. This has been such a beautiful experience, honestly, so blessed. My name, I've been Jay Percy.
And I'm Nicola. And thank you so much for tuning in this week and listening to us. We will catch you next week. Bye.
Toodaloo.
Bye.
Thank you, beautiful being of the multiverse, for joining us on the Afro Animist Podcast.
If you want to get stuck into the conversation or have a question about anything we speak about here, join our mailing list and find us on our socials.
On TikTok and Instagram, find us at the Afro Animist Podcast.
On Twitter, you can find us at Afro Animist. If you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Music, you can also find this talk on YouTube. Just search for us and we will pop up as if by magic.
If you're loving what we're talking about here, share, like, and subscribe. And remember to leave us a thumbs up or 5-star rating on your favourite platform.